this chapter, we will be discussing about traders, kings and pilgrims. So, we are dividing the chapter into three parts and we will be discussing about them separately. So, they were inevitable part of the society. We cannot mark a distinguishing line between them. They are interrelated. They are related to each other, but even then point wise we will be discussing about them. First we will start with trade. When we are discussing about the trade, first we need to see which all are the items that were very much popular even in the foreign market, and Indian traders or the foreign traders, those who are coming to India, they used to use those items mostly for business purpose. Even in India, from one place to another place, they are using these few specific items for trading. Though trading, the items of trading, they were massive in number. It is not possible in a very short space to specify them. But even then, few of them, they actually got very much importance even in the foreign market as well as in every part of India. So, mostly what we have seen, that traders, they are trading northern black polish ware. In northern side, this type of a particular type of a pot was very famous, and we have found evidences of these particular type of potteries in various part of the subcontinent. That gives us a clear glimpse that this was a very favorite item for them to trade, to take it from one place to sell it out in another place and to make some profit. Traders may carry them from one place to another for trading purpose. South India was very famous for gold, precious stones as well as paper, spices. Paper here I must mention it separately, because paper was known as black gold. It was termed in that when it was a very popular trading item even in the Roman countries. The traders, even Roman traders, when they are visiting India, they are taking back paper with them, as well as even Indian traders, they are taking paper as a selling item to various countries of the South Middle Asian countries. Also we have seen that the traders, they carried all these goods like gold or special stones or paper and all them in the ships. They are just and they are now taking to their respective territories to sell them, to trade them. These traders, what we have seen, that they are mostly dependent on southwest monsoon winds for their sailing. So they need, because most of them, as they use the sea route to travel, they used to wait for this trade wind, that is monsoon. So it is known as monsoon based trade. The time that monsoon winds are blowing, those time period, they found that it is very easy for them to sail from their place to India, and mostly the coastal region of South India was very favorite place for these foreign traders to come to India as a gateway. Traders, they explored several sea routes. Some of these are followed to the coast mostly. There are other across the Arabian Sea, and some of them we have find that they are in the Bay of Bengal, depending from the places they are coming, as like we have seen that even Chinese travelers, the travelers from Myanmar or Burma, they are preferring Bay of Bengal, and the people from Italy or Rome, the traders, they are preferring the sea route that is coming through the Arabian Sea. We have seen that, and naturally as they are carrying lots of loads on their ships, they are very strong, sturdy, and huge in size, that they can carry whatever the trading item they want from India or they want to trade with India. This is we will discuss about Silk Route after we get a glimpse on the kings and the kingdoms, because it is very much related with the kingdoms. Here in southern part of the country, we have seen that Mohenjo are the group of authoritarian people, those who started controlling all those coastal areas. Mostly the reason was that these region, the coastal region, they are very much enriched with trading products. People are coming here, naturally the traders, those who are coming to India, they are gifting, it is not tax, but they are bound to give some gift to the local rulers in terms of doing a favorable trade in the particular area. So these people, some people, they got their power in their hand and they started ruling these coastal regions mostly. And we have seen over the period of time, these rulers, those who are controlling the coastal part, they have continuous fight between themselves because they wanted to control the trading towns or cities mostly. Now these people, what we have seen amongst the river valleys, as the Kaveri river valley was very much fertile, so they started, the kings, they started controlling all those river valleys also for to get their foods and all. And the Sangam poets, they have mentioned the Mohenjo. It is a Tamil word that means three chiefs. Three chiefs means they are from Cheras, Cholas and Pandyas. These three rulers, they started controlling the entire, mostly the entire coastal region, though in between sometimes some other, the name of some other dynasties or some other rulers also we found there. But the most important three, those who controlled the coastal line for long time they were Cheras, Cholas and Pandyas. Each of these three chiefs, they have two centers of power. One is inland and another one is in the coast. So from one center they are controlling their own territory, but they have a close knit control on the coastal areas also. So very important, there were mainly 6 cities, but the very important one was Puhar and Madurai. Puhar was in the Kaveri Delta and Madurai Madurai was the capital of the Pandyas. And Puhar or the Kaveri Patnam, that is a port of Cholas. They even started controlling the way out, the ocean way also, to control trading completely, to have control of what trading completely in their hand. Now what these traders will be expecting from these kings, the natural expectation is they must have protection from the outside robbers. They must be able to sell out their products, whatever they are bringing for trading, and they must have a peaceful agreement with the local administration. So naturally, those who are providing them these facilities, they were the most popular one. These kings, they are not fixing any taxes. Rather, these people, the traders, those who are coming, first they need to give some gifts to this local administrator or the ruler to please them, to get that right that they can do some business in their land. What in reverse they are getting that security and safety of their products and their money, whatever they are gaining by trading. Nextly, we have seen that many poets of Sangam literature, they praise all these chiefs, those who often rewarded them by precious stones. So naturally, we have seen there is a social connection with these traders and the common people. So naturally, and the person, the administrator who is controlling the entire chain, he is the most powerful one in the society. The Cholas, they are given this, they are giving gifts like gold like precious stones, even like golden chariots, and animals like elephant or horses. All these were they are gifting to the king by the names of gifts. Uh, Around 200 years after, we have seen that one particular dynasty, it started controlling the central Indian part mostly, and they are known as Satavahanas. And they were about the Satavahana ruler. We come to know about from an inscription written by a lady, by a queen. Her name was Gautami. Gautami Balasri. Gautami Balasri's son, who was renowned as Gautami Putra Satakarni, was the famous king from Satavahanas, and who started controlling not only the coastal region but as well as the Silk Route also. Now we will discuss about the Silk Route. What is Silk Route? Silk was an item that was invented. First it was discovered by Chinese people, and then they invented many of the ways to make silk material, silk sarees and all, and they started selling it out in the other market at a very high cost. Now Chinese was the first one who knew how to prepare silk items, and they never shared it with rest of the world for a very long time. So naturally, to get silk, the only way was to get it from China, from the Chinese people. But silk was very popular even in India and other countries like Roman people, they started considering silk as a fashion item, as a way that like very high class people, or the people those who are from the higher part of the society, the rich people, they choose silk to show their glamour and all. And naturally silk was a very expensive one, and they were very much in need for this silk item. Now these Chinese people, they followed mostly two ways as the silk route, one inland and one is using the southern part of India, the coastal line. Naturally, the kings, the local rulers, they started controlling both the ways. Those who are the silk traders, they are passing, because these traders, while going, they are carrying a very precious item, that is silk, and while going back to their own country, they are carrying lots of money. To save their product as well as save their earning, these traders, they need some protection from the robbers. So these local kings, the local authorities, they started giving them that protection by terms of gaining some taxes, some money from them, that this is the route for which is passes through my region. So when you are passing this, you are safe, you can travel safely by giving this tax or this toll tax, like that. So they started taking this money, in terms of providing safety and security to the traders. So naturally, the rulers, every rulers, they try to control the maximum part of the silk route to gain more money. They provide, so they were continuous in war for that reason, but that was the way they started control. That was the need, their need also, as well as they are fulfilling the need of the traders also to control, to complete their trading using the silk route. Not only the traders but other people, those who also they are passing through using this silk route, as it was a renowned one, and the traders are always using this route. They were some of the Buddhist pilgrims and other scholars, they also started using the silk route for their own purposes. Now some of these rulers of South India, though they started controlling some of the parts of the Silk Route, the most famous one was Kushanas, Kanishka. He controlled the maximum part of the inland Silk Route, mostly in the northwestern side of India. And that was the way he also gained a lot from the Silk Route traders. The route in central, that is going through Central Asia, almost 2000 years back, this is the time period of Kanishka when he completely controlled this entire area, and in turn he has given safety and security, but he got a good taxes from the people, those who are using this route. The two major center was Peshawar and Mathura, and Taxila also included in their kingdom later on. In this time when they ruled this area, we have seen that a branch of Silk Route that extended down at the mouth of river Indus, and from where silk was shipped to the western side. So they need to cross Indus river and to reach the western part of the world. This was they were amongst the our earliest rulers. In that way we have seen the Kushanas, that those who issued gold coins. So we can see that they earned that much. The prosperity of the kingdom was so much, they were able to even issue gold coins. Using Silk Route, the Buddhism also spread from India to outside. We have seen in this time period that many Chinese pilgrims, they came to India. Now we are seeing the connection of all these pilgrims. The main point is spread of Buddhism. These Chinese people, those who accepted Buddhism, now they need to know about Buddha well, and for that they need to travel to India. And as these people, they usually travel alone, they cannot take that risk to travel that entire way from China to India alone. They used to take help of the traders. With the trading community, many people were how they are traveling. Usually these pilgrims also, they used to accompany them to come to a place. The famous, we can see that at the time of Kushanas, Kanishka was a famous ruler who actually helped a lot to spread Buddhism, not only in India, even outside India also. It was his time when the third Buddhist council that happened in Kashmir, and this was the time when Buddhism divided into two parts. One is Hinayana and one is Mahayana. This was the time, as a supporter of Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, he started supporting making of different types of idols or statues of Buddha, and those statues again it went outside of India through these people, those who are coming here for pilgrims. One renowned monk was, as Kanishka was converted to Buddhism, a renowned Buddhist monk was his court poet. His name was Ashwaghosh, who has written Buddha Charita. So we can find many information even about this time period from this write-up. Buddhist scholars, they started writing in Sanskrit, using Sanskrit. Now Buddhism, a new form of Buddhism, that is Mahayana Buddhism, that formed at this point of time, where first they thought as Buddha was someone who is just their teacher, who is teaching them how to live their life better and how to attain moksha or nirvana. This is the time period when they started praying to Buddha as a god. So they started making idols of Buddha, and that's the way they started praying to Buddha. The second change what we have seen, that is a belief in Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, again, that is a Jataka stories, that is he has his earlier incarnation when he taught us how to live, how to gain betterment in our life. Now, in this incarnation was sometimes as a human being, sometimes it was as some in the form of some animals also. But this idea of Bodhisattva, that also was gained in the community of Mahayana, and many different stories of Bodhisattva we find in this period of time. Buddhism also spread in western and southern India, where dozens of caves were hollowed, because you know that stupas and monasteries was needed for the people, those who accepted Buddhism, for the Buddhist monks to stay there. Most of these caves we have found that they are on the way of the crossroads of North India and South India. Many queens, kings, and sometimes big merchants and traders, they appointed their slaves or their work person to make all these monasteries or the caves for the Buddhist monks. Buddhism also spread southeastward, like in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, and some part of Southeast Southeast Asia, including Indonesia also. The older form of Buddhism, that is known as Theravada Buddhism, it was also popular in some of the areas, but mostly Mahayana Buddhism was spread out in everywhere, wherever the new concept of Buddhism was accepted. Now, it is a need to discuss that why these pilgrims they came to India. So, these pilgrims, now they need to know about their religion and their India. Pilgrims are the men and women who undertake journeys to the holy places in order to offer worship. So, the place where Buddha born or Buddha God achieved his moksha, or all those places were very much popular for these pilgrims to visit, and they need to know. Best known pilgrims at this Buddhist pilgrims at the time period was Fahian. Then we have who came to the subcontinent about 1600 years ago. We have seen the Xuanzang who came about 1400 years ago, and I Qing who came 50 years after the Zhuangguang, and they visited places, many places that is associated to Buddha's life. Now, these pilgrims, they started writing their experience, sharing their experience, whatever they have seen, whatever they have learned in India, how they found the places while they are traveling, how was their travel, everything they started writing down. So, that this traveler's account or travel good, they also act as a very important source of information for us to build history. The countries, they wrote down about all the countries they visited, all the places they visited. As Xuanzang, who took the land route to back to China, while going back he carried lots of gold, silver, and Buddha statues, and many of the books Buddhist about the Buddhist religion that was written in India. While going back, though the over 50 manuscript that was capsized when he was crossing Indus river, then after going back to even then he carried a lot of books with him. So after he reached in his place, the rest of his life he spent translating the books he carried from Sanskrit to Chinese. The next part we have seen that Fahian, when he took the way through Bay of Bengal. Now, while he was going, at that time there was a huge turmoil on the sea. There was a very hard, barely they can travel for 2 days. That time they caught in a storm. Now, all the traders, even they started throwing out all the belongings, all the trading items, whatever maybe they are carrying, in order to lighten the weight of the ship. But Fahian, even in this way also, he have never gave up the Buddhist the statue he was carrying of Buddha, his God, as well as the books he was carrying with him. He never gave up them, and he anyway after that the problem, rather he thrown everything, whatever his own belongings, but related to Buddhism, everything he carried with him. Again, when he reached in the other part of Indonesia, he has to wait for almost 6 months to get some good group of traders, along with whom he went back to his country, China. Nalanda was a unique center for learning at this point of time, Nalanda University. It is Nalanda University. Nalanda has many beautiful facts about what these pilgrims, even Yuan Zhang, at the later point of time, they wrote down. We came to know that Nalanda was a place where even the entry was restricted for common people. If someone is interested to get admission in Nalanda, they have to give some answers asked by the security personnel at the gate, the gatekeepers. If the students, they are able to satisfy those people by giving proper answers, then only they were allowed to enter in this university. And as per Yuan Zhang, that 8 out of 10 students, they were failed to answer. That was the type of question we can see. It was a very renowned university with a huge stocks of books at that point of time, and it was a dream for every pilgrim, you can say, students at that point of time, were interested and eager to learn about Buddhism, to learn it from Nalanda University. They spent lot of time here in this university to learn properly Buddhism, and then went back and spread it in their own areas, own territories. Even the others also, we have seen that they spent a long time, like Zhang, he also spent a long time period in Nalanda to learn about Buddhism. This was one side of spreading, using Buddhism, the pilgrims mostly from China, those who came to India. The another part what we find, that is Bhakti movement. This is the time when worshipping certain deities that was very much prominent in the society. God and goddesses like Shiva, Vishnu and Durga, they got the prime attention in the social system, in the Hindu social system. Now different incarnation of Vishnu also, these deities, they also was worshipped by the common people. So some of the places were very much important for common people to visit as they wanted, as the pilgrims area. Like Mathura, we can take an example. Mathura was imagined as a place for Krishna. So it was a pilgrim city. As a pilgrim city also, it got its importance, and people started visiting Mathura, turning it as a major trading center as well. Even in there was so-called low caste and high caste. They can follow anyone in the society. They can follow bhakti. So bhakti is something that comes from the heart of the people, that to pray God. So it cannot be based on anything. At the same time, naturally, so this pilgrim also was not concentrated for a particular sector in the Hindu society. It was spread for all and everyone. We can even see in this period of time that there is a beautiful influence, a very good influence of Buddhism on Hinduism, as well as with the some influence of Hinduism only. We can see that Buddhism also started, the people, they started following a new trend, that is Mahayana, that they started praying to a statue, where statue of Buddha, idol of Buddha, where idealism was not there before. Even in Hindu religion, we have seen that very strict caste system was no more prevalent. It was there, caste system was there in the society, but God was not only meant for the higher class people, He was meant for all. As people started learning about Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagavan Krishna told Arjuna that everybody is same in the eyes of God. So they can follow, they can do their work and they can get their result. Here there is no discrimination about that in the eyes of God. So people started learning about them. And as a result, even different pilgrim center for Hindus also we can find at this point of time. So bhakti, that word came from Sanskrit word that is vaj, that means to divide or share. So they suggest that inmates the two-way relationship between God and his between the God and their devotee, the deity and the devotee. So in one way, devotee is praying to God and deity is giving something, accepting that relationship, that the devotee is praying, giving that importance to the deity. There are several stories on the literally where they are showing that whenever someone is doing some good deed, they are gaining it back, they are getting it back from their deity as in the form of reward, or anyway deity started staying with them also. Like that, different stories we can find at this particular point of time. As the deities was very special for the devotees, so deities cannot stay always at the same place where the devotee is staying. They need a special house for them, where all the devotees they can assemble, they can pray. So time for their own houses, they are known as temples. So Hindu deities, they are staying at temples, and different kings, they started making many temples in India at this point of period of time. We will come about the temples in our next chapters, later chapters, where we'll find that even the pilgrims, Hindu pilgrims, they are moving from one place, they are coming from one place to another place just to visit a particular temple, just to visit a particular place where God is their God, their beloved God, whom they are devoting. This God is living. Hindu is a word that actually it is like the term India. Hindu also came from Indus river. From that the word Hindu derived, and it was Arabs and Iranians who lived in eastern side of the river, and their cultural practices and cultural religious beliefs also, it was anyway influenced by these type of ideology, and people started following them. So in this chapter what we have seen, that trade started controlling the society. Even the kings and kingdoms like the Movendar or the Satavahanas, what we have seen that they were actually in try of control, they were actually trying to controlling the trading system from where they can gain the maximum benefit. Traders started controlling the entire social system. Pilgrimers and pilgrims, they actually given a boost up to those traders, because all these pilgrim centers ultimately it turns to the trading cities for the traders, and naturally all the kings, the kingdoms, they started controlling the pilgrim regions also. This was about this chapter. Thank you.